Hello and welcome to Pichonniere. This is the final episode of Year 2. It's been pretty eventful. We've come a long way. We know when I say we know we're near finished conversion to regenerative farming, we've actually gone quite some way, but there's still some work to be done. We're going to start this episode by moving the calves, the dairy herd calves that we have in our calving barn. We're going to put them out in the small field at the top for a little while until they're matured. I think they're about 8 months old now. Give them a little bit of time in the sunshine before they go into the shed. We have a plan for the shed as well, to be able to bring our dairy herd more in line with mob grazing, but I'll get into that in a little while as well. So while I was moving these over, and as we are closing off this last episode of the second year, I've turned my mind to what we can get and what we are entitled to because of our change to regenerative farming. Of course, there's quite a few incentives to actually change to regenerative farming in terms of monetary incentives, but we'll get into that in a little bit later in this episode. The first thing I'm going to do is, as I said, I'm going to move these into this field here, and it also brought up the question in my mind of cows and the sort of bad press that they've had over the years in terms of how bad they are and for the environment, specifically because of their methane digestion and of course their burps in inverted commas, and how bad that is for the environment. But carefully managed, we can actually bring down their effect to the environment quite substantially, and almost to zero if you manage it carefully. So in our situation at the moment, we will struggle to bring our whole cow operation down to net zero because we do have our dairy herd. They do have a substantial field that they do work in. So we can get them reasonably close, but we will be working on that in the future. So one of the ways of getting your cows down to sort of carbon neutral is to do what we're doing now, which is called mob grazing, basically, and moving them very often from field to field. In reality, you would do it every couple of days, really. And small sections of the field, and what it does is because of the way the cows graze, as they're grazing down the grass, it basically stresses the grass, and the root systems start working harder and to grow new grass, of course, and release more nutrients into the field. So I've just, as you've seen, they've been working on the lucerne field, or the alfalfa field, and we've just harvested that, and we've taken that through to the animal dealer to sell it to them. Of course, this whole thing is we're just going through in terms of the video that you're watching, is just going through our routine, our late summer routine, while we're waiting for things to grow. And so that I'm just talking over that basically in terms of our position in terms of regenerative farming, and essentially what we can make out of it. So we'll just get this load into the dealer. And so just to finish off the strategies or the strategy of mob grazing our our cows and cattle. There are other methods which we'll investigate, and I'm not quite sure how we'll do it, but of course farmers are feeding their cows, of course, reduced or feed that reduces the methane production as well. So that's also something that I will have to look into. Just didn't really get much time to look into it while I was doing this job, so to speak. Yeah, so basically we can attempt to get the carbon footprint to zero, but for us, in terms of regenerative farming, the effects on the field and the regenerating of making the fields more effective in carbon sequestration is their main job at this stage. But we will bear in mind trying to keep our cows down to being carbon neutral. Right, I'm going to move the goats over now to a new field. They basically just up to the second part of that big field, and then we're going to work on the field that we've taken them from, which is, as we're facing it now, the top field. The one behind us is where we're going to just drop them off, and we're going to plant some oats in there. So first of all, we'll do our normal after animals routine. We'll lime it if it needs liming and put some more manure onto it, and then we will, as I said, just plant some oats. Now we need to start talking about carbon sequestration as a whole, and what our basic principle is. Well, we know more or less what our basic principle is. We're using regenerative farming to not only improve the soil, but also for our own benefit. And you will have noticed, of course, we've been using regenerative farming, not regenerative farming. I'm getting confused with all my terms now. We've been using precision farming to analyze all our fields. So there are strategies and incentives to change into regenerative farming, notwithstanding the fact that some governments and some municipalities, well, not it's normally done at government level, but will provide a grant to convert your fields or to convert your operation into regenerative farming, in terms of a grant or a yearly stipend or something along those lines. And then, of course, there's also the fact that we can sell carbon credits. So the carbon credits are pretty interesting. Essentially what happens is that when you decide to convert to regenerative farming, is you take a snapshot of your farm, which is what we did when we were doing all the precision farming, analyzing of the field. So every field that we buy, we analyze in terms of its field composition, but we're also analyzing, it doesn't actually do it in precision farming, but we would also be analyzing for our carbon levels in the soil. And then it's normally done over a 5-year period, but you can do it over shorter periods to start with, which is what we're going to do this year. And then after a certain amount of time here, you will go and have your soils analyzed again, and the additional carbon in your soil is the carbon that you have sequestrated. So that is the additional carbon that we've added into the soil by our regenerative farming practices. So the main way to increase your carbon capture, so to improve your carbon levels in the soil, is by doing regenerative farming, by adding cover crops, by no tilling, so no ploughing, direct seeding, and of course by having your animals on your fields. So your mob grazing, which ties in very nicely with bringing your dairy and cattle farm into closer to net zero in terms of their personal carbon emissions. So the first thing that one would really do is, as we said, we did all the analyzing, and you can see all the fields that have been analyzed through precision farming. We do, of course, get a bit of added incentive in terms of practicing precision farming, in terms of the prices that we get paid for, or the bonuses that we get paid for anything that we develop. But getting into regenerative farming is just a couple of steps up on precision farming. So precision farming still allows things like utilizing chemical fertilizers, which we are not using, herbicides, which we are not using, and those are the things that add to your soil being to effectively capturing more carbon. You only get paid for the difference in carbon, so you have to have a base level of carbon production, or of carbon in your fields. And that's what we did when we did the original precision farming. And precision farming analyzing of the fields. And that gave us our base level. So obviously in FS22 we don't really have an ability to determine the carbon level, so we'll be doing it on averages that I've researched through my research into carbon sequestration. Just to break off a little bit from that at the moment, a little bit of interesting, I've decided to go for a higher horsepower tractor. The case is struggling with the fields, the inclines on the fields. It's okay for most things. So I'm going to have to get rid of the case or the Massey somewhere along the line. But at the moment I'm going to go and lease or take a higher purchase deal on this Valtra. We'll get a little bit more oomph in our on our farm basically, and that of course is actually counterproductive to regenerative farming, because we've now gone and bought a much bigger diesel engine, and we've now got 3 diesel machines which are pumping out all sorts of stuff into the atmosphere, of course. And that brings us neatly back to our carbon sequestration and determining what carbon credits we earn. So once you've established your base for your carbon capture by precision farming, analyzing of the fields, etc., and also, incidentally, it uses the powers that be. In this case, because we're in France, it'll be the European Agency for Regenerative Farming. I've forgotten what it's called, to be honest. I did have it in my mind, but in any case, it'll come to me sooner or later. So they would come out, analyze your fields. And they also use satellite images to make sure that you are not plowing your fields, because as soon as you plow your fields, you lose any carbon credits that you have, because the whole principle is that once you plow your fields, that actually releases the carbon that is stored in the field. Not all of it, of course, but some of it. And that is why we get away from the ploughing and the turning over the soil, and rather use natural methods by adding cover crops, etc. So that is vitally important, and they've had to tighten up this whole little monitoring section for carbon credits, because it was, as I saw in in one of the documents that I read, a bit of a Wild West show at one stage. Yeah, people were just claiming what they could and establishing carbon credits, but that has been tightened up substantially over the last couple of years. It's still relatively new. In the EU, the carbon credits are determined by something called the Carbon Removal and Carbon Farming (CRCF) regulation, which is a new gold standard just come out in April this year, 2026. So we are as up to date as you can get on that. And basically that establishes the rules and framework for applying for and getting your carbon credits. And those are soil carbon sequestration, so cover cropping, no-till, and diverse crop rotations, which is the basis of what we are doing. And then you can start increasing and making your credits more valuable by adding other things, such as agroforestry. So if you start integrating trees into your cropland or pastures, this gives you an added bonus on top of your carbon credit pricing and such. You can also add in, and what is added to that is what they call nutrient management, which is the reduction and, in our case, the complete non-utilization of fertilizers and herbicides. So anything that is synthetic going into. You can also add on peatland re-wetting, but of course we don't have any peatland on our crop, at least on our farm. So we've just harvested that spelt, by the way. That's kind of what we're doing on screen now. The spelt that we planted in the top field. So the market prices that you can get these days for carbon credits. So if it's just standard soil carbon, so just the ordinary work that we are doing at the moment, you can get between 25 and 45 euros per ton of carbon sequestrated, which, as I said, is determined by which is the difference between your base carbon in your soil and the carbon that you have, or the increase in carbon sequestrated by your soil by a later scanning and determination of the carbon in your field. In other words, rechecking it. So basically, your carbon credit is only the difference between what you have actually is determined by the improvement that you have made in carbon sequestration by your lands. So you can also add on, and if you're using biochar, and that is one of the reasons why we're getting into biochar, is that pushes the price up to around about 270 euros, 150 to 270 euros, so quite substantial. I think that is the basis of carbon credits, carbon sequestration, and what we can make from it. So as we finish off this year in the gloom, thank you so much for watching. I do hope you found this informative and enjoyable at the same time. And in the very first episode, we will determine how much we make from all these things that are available to us, and see what we can, how much more we can bring into the farm. So once again, I do hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you, and cheerio.